Steve Prescott's hands up! For Steve Prescott's hands up! For Steve Prescott's hands up!
Welcome to Serious About Rugby League. Today on the agenda we're going to talk about David Furner. Obviously his exit from Leeds. Was it fair? Was it the right time? He's only been there for 4 months of the actual season. He's managed them for 14 games. They've won 4 of those. They're in 10th position. Is it fair? Is it the right time, Ian?
No, it's completely the wrong time. He's had 14 games. He was given a 3-year contract, and he was told, you know, you've got to overhaul this entire squad. And you know, Leeds, they've lost their golden generation now. This smacks to me of Leeds trying to live on what they've done in recent years when they can't really do it. I just think 14 games is it's an insult, frankly. And you know, to see him in the news saying that he's going to take legal action absolutely doesn't surprise me at all.
Well, they aren't actually direct quotes from David Furner yet, but the reports are that he's going to sue the club for unfair dismissal because he's claiming that he was brought in to overhaul the squad. He's probably brought in a couple of his own players, but he's not been able to get the players out to bring more in, and he hasn't been allowed the opportunity to overhaul the squad, and now he's left in a predicament whereby he can't get the results on the pitch because he can't get the players he wants, and it seems he's now been sacked and he's been told no by the board. So it just seems to me a massive mess at the club, doesn't it?
It just seems like he's not been given that chance. That, you know, he knows how he wants the game played, and he knows the players who are going to play it the way he wants it played and have the most effect on it. And you know, with the best will in the world to blokes like Jamie Jones Buchanan, you know, Brad Singleton, you know, Liam Sutcliffe, you know, they maybe don't fit into the way that he wants the game played. You know, I mean, when you look at what can be achieved by a coach getting the team that he wants to play the game the way that he wants, take a look at Steve McNamara. You know, when Catalan appointed him, everybody just laughed at them. They thought, well, why on earth have you bothered? You know, he's hopeless. And in his first season, he won the Challenge Cup.
Well, that takes me on to you, sir, that people were laughing at that appointment. So Richard Agar's now come in. He's come in as interim head coach. A few fans are not pleased about that. He initially came to the Rhinos in the background as a player and coach development position, and because of Jimmy Lowe's exit at the start of last month, he's then been promoted to assistant coach. Furner's been sacked, and out of nowhere, he's found himself from in the background to in the top job. Now, should he be allowed a few games to prove himself, Richard Agar, or do you think Leeds should appoint a more stable manager looking at the long term, Jason?
I think they should take a long term view. So I don't greatly think Leeds are in danger of going down. Do they want to panic and throw someone else in and then be in the same situation, or they're gonna? I think they need to give it a few weeks or months to see and get the right appointment they actually want for the job. So give Richard Agar a chance.
Well, I'll come to you on this, Ian, because Kevin Sinfield said the club are fortunate. They've got rid of Furner and they've got a coach of great experience in the role now, so they don't have to rush to look for a replacement. Now, to me, that screams of we're going to give him a few games and see how he goes, and if Leeds can get on a bit of a roll, he'll probably get the job permanently. Do you think he would be a good appointment?
I mean, obviously, my team will obviously have history with Richard Agar. He came in when they sacked John Keir. He came in as a temporary replacement, and he was unbeaten for, I think it was something like 10 or 12 or 13 games or something like that. And then they brought in Peter Sharp, who went to a grand final, and then when Peter Sharp got sacked, everybody was campaigning, oh, give it to Richard Agar, you know, the bloke's unbeaten, he was brilliant. So they gave it to Richard Agar halfway through what was a very troubled season for Hull, and his first achievement, he took us to Wembley. Then it all fell apart, didn't it? And you know, it took time, but it did fall apart. I think Richard Agar is one who he'll get you out of a mess like Leeds are in at the moment. He'll if at the moment I hesitate to say it, but they are relegation candidates. He will sort that out, possibly get them away from that. Whether he's a long-term appointment, I don't think he is, because when you appoint a coach, and again this is why they shouldn't have sacked Furner as quick as they have done. You appoint a coach, he brings in his staff, he brings in the sort of players that he wants, and he changes the whole culture of the club. And Furner has now been sacked because he hasn't got results on the pitch. It's because he hasn't been given that time that he should have been given. Agar is not one who's really going to install that sort of culture that Leeds really need. And I think there are potential replacements out there that are on, that have been touted by the bookies, who would have a much better, would install a better culture at Leeds, would install what Leeds need. Really.
Well, we spoke the reasons for Dave Furner's sacking it being put forward as Kevin Sinfield as the results of the problem. Now, you spoke there about Richard Agar would not be a long-term option, he would be a short-term, he would get them out of the mess they're in now. Isn't that what Leeds want? Otherwise they would have just kept David Furner on a 3-year deal, hoping that eventually his ideas would get across to the players. But, I mean, he's not been given the amount of time necessary to do that, and they've got rid of him because they're obviously scared about relegation, so would Richard Agar not be perfect for that?
It would be ideal to get them away from relegation. Yes, I think he'll do that. But Richard Agar, for all his qualities, what I would say he's a very good assistant coach. He is not a very good first head coach. He's not. He's a bit too. I would say that he will play the game in a way that the Leeds fans will maybe not like.
Yeah.
He'll be effective for a while, and they'll take some breaking down under Richard Agar. Any team under Richard Agar does take some breaking down. But long term, if you're looking at bringing on young players, I mean, I think it got mentioned that Gary Hetherington is suddenly saying, "Oh yeah, Leeds should have a reserve team." You need somebody at the head of that. Richard Agar would be very good for a Leeds reserve team and assisting a Leeds head coach. He will not be a long-term Leeds head coach.
Well, that's the role he was brought into. He wanted player and coach development. Yeah. But let's come to you on this, Jason, because there are a lot of other potential candidates for the job. Who out of those stands out for you?
I was looking at the odds, and it seemed a bit strange that Shane Flanagan had moved to favourite. He just doesn't strike me as the type, with his past and getting deregistered by the NRL, that'd fit at Leeds Rhinos.
Yeah.
That's not the ethos they tend to show from that club. The impressive names in the list who have done well at the other clubs, I think, pretty much ruled themselves out. Chris Chester at Wakefield, Darryl Powell at Cast, they'd be. But it looks, the movement seems to be towards Sean Wayne, which I think it'd be good for Leeds, but it'd just be very strange of how it's all gone with him at Wigan. He went through their academy, built a whole system there, a whole squad, all the players have left, and then for him to turn up now as Leeds Rhinos coach would be pretty. Really wonder what went on there.
Yeah. So, do you think Sean Wayne would be a good appointment? Because it, like Jason said, it just seemed a bit like a strange appointment. He's a Wigan lad.
He's a Wigan lad, but he's an ex-Leeds player. And he knows the standing of the club in the area, and he knows the sort of the levels that they will demand. Sean Wayne and Gary Hetherington at the same club, I'm not so sure that would work.
Yeah.
Because they're two very big egos. I would personally say Sean Wayne would do a similar job at Leeds to what he did at Wigan if he was allowed. And when they've sacked one coach after 14 games, I'm not so sure that Sean Wayne would be given the sort of time that he got at Wigan, to build that whole culture throughout the club, through the reserves and everything, the academy to the first team and all the rest of it. I'm not sure that they would go, that he would go for that. He's shown interest, that's fair enough. I think, and I will say now, Shane Flanagan, he is not the sort of coach Leeds need right now. He's got too much baggage, he's got too much controversy in his background, and people, at the moment, I think people are just waiting for Leeds to fail. And if they appoint Shane Flanagan, he's one who, he would be under massive scrutiny, intense pressure, and I'm not saying he couldn't handle it, because obviously he could, but with his background, there's always going to be that element there that it's not about Leeds, it's more about him and his background in the NRL, and people saying, I mean, if we can't have Israel fall out over here for his religious beliefs, can you have a coach who was involved in a doping scandal?
Yeah.
Involved in Super League? I would say no, definitely not.
Yeah.
I think your better option to look at would be someone like possibly Richard Marshall, because I mean we know what he did at Halifax was fantastic, and he could do it if he's given that time, And the thing is, he's not a big name. He's not an ego. He is somebody. I think there's somebody in the boardroom at Leeds who maybe needs to take a step back and say, right, there's the coach, get on with it. Kevin Sinfield needs to take a step back and say, right, let him get on with it. Let's look at his previous track record. He's got a good track record. Let him get on with it. Give him what he needs and not have too much outside influence, which I think possibly is existing at Leeds at the moment.
So what about Richard Marshall for you, Jason? Because he was the initial favourite for the job. He's come out to 8-1, but at the Salford game last weekend, he was seen in the stands with Kevin Sinfield, which seems a little bit coincidental to me.
The sacking's gone there. Yeah, I would have thought if they was going to sack Furner, they'd have already made their mind up before they sacked him.
Yeah.
Which then would put a lot of heat towards Richard Marshall. It's very strange how he got moved on at Halifax, but I think that was down to, was it contract issues with, they didn't really see him for the next year.
Yeah.
Is that why they ended up parting company?
Yeah. Well, I think with him at Halifax, he's done a great job, but I mean, it almost came to the point where the club didn't match his ambitions.
Yeah.
And he's not being given a top job. He's not being given an opportunity in Super League. Do you think he would do a good job at Leeds? Would he be able to manage the dressing room? Would he be able to get them out of the trouble they're in?
You'd have to just give him a go with any of the type, because I couldn't really judge him on. He's done a good job at Halifax, but until he gets a job at a big club. And Leeds have to go in with the mindset that whoever they appoint is a long-term employment.
Yeah.
So to give him a chance to build.
I mean, this is why this job would suit Richard Marshall right now, is because he's coming from that similar background of having to build something. Whoever goes into Leeds right now has got to build something. They've got to forget everything that's happened with the golden generation. They need to get past that now, and they need to start, right, we're starting from scratch. We're in the bottom of Super League, we're threatened with relegation. We need somebody who can really build something.
Yeah.
And Richard Marshall could do that.
Well, just lastly on this, we've got outside bets of Tony Smith. You mentioned Ian Watson, actually, Jason.
Yeah,
do you think he should be given a shot?
I think he could do a top job. I think he's done brilliantly at Salford. And they don't really have much depth behind the first team, and a lot of change off-field issues over the last few years. And they keep a lot of recruitment changes. I think he's done well. It's obviously helped with signings like Jackson Hastings.
Well, if he could bring Hastings with him, he'd be definitely welcome. And then just finally, we've got Rob Burrows coaching the academy. That would be a massive outside bet. I think they're more likely to go with Agar if they're to go with somebody who's actually at the club now. So it's interesting. We've got a lot of candidates. With the odds are going up and down. We've got.
I mean, another one who would build something would be Danny Ward.
Yeah, that's a great shout. Yeah.
even his predecessor at London, Mr. Henderson.
Yeah.
No, wouldn't.
Well, he's not even been mentioned, so...
Precisely.
So he could be an outside. I think you said actually yesterday, Jason, that if Leeds brought in Danny Ward, it would relegate London and save them anyway. So yeah, that would be an option. But like as we mentioned, there is a lot of options that have been mentioned, and the odds are constantly fluctuating. So it'd be interesting to see how it goes.
Well, I mean, there's another name. He's actually in the area, and his current team are playing Leeds in the Challenge Cup. Mr. John Keir would be another one who I would say he could go in there and he could, because I mean he understands Leeds, he understands the whole West Yorkshire Rugby League area, and I think. I would have to say he'd be an outside bet. Nobody's mentioned him.
No,
but. At the end of the day, he's got massive experience, and he's got a thing about obviously winning the Challenge Cup. But he also, when Wakefield needed to avoid relegation, they turned to him and they avoided relegation. I would say possibly think about John Keir.
Yeah.
He would be another
Well,
one.
there's so many names that are being mentioned. Leeds fans, who do you want? Do you agree with David Furner's sacking? Make sure to like this video, subscribe, and let us know in the comments.
Watch every game of the NRL, plus the grand final and State of Origin, from anywhere outside Australia, New Zealand or the Pacific Islands. Go to watchnrl.com and take the footy with ya.